What's up, YouTube, and welcome to my pickups video for the month of January 2024. Wasn't a real packed month with pickups, and travel was a little bit light this month. I just got back from a work trip to Denver, Colorado, and what was different a little bit about this trip is I got to fan out from Denver and visit a lot more of the state of Colorado, which meant hitting a few game stores that I'd never been to along the way also. I've said it before in prior videos, but in my opinion, the state of Colorado is probably one of the richest states in the United States for retro video games. There's just a ton of independent stores that are still in business in 2024, and many of them even go back to the 90s and sometimes even late 80s that they've been in business, which is really impressive. One thing that is neat was just hitting some that I'd been to before and just seeing what else new had gotten traded in, and then even visiting a couple that I'd never been to before, including one that had a large selection of sealed PS1 games that, because they had been in business since 1998, I think were just sealed dead stock that they never sold. So they weren't giving them away by any means, but it was definitely neat to see, and just kind of crazy that some of that stuff just seems kind of untouched that hasn't been discovered yet. So hopefully I'm not giving away all my secrets, but it seems like Colorado has got all the hot stuff right now. Let's go ahead and get started and talk about some games I got this month. So first one is a Japanese PS1 import. Not something I was seriously looking for. I actually was just playing around on eBay and got this for like less than $10 sealed, and it's called Elemental Pinball. I am a big fan of video pinball games, and especially wanted to check this one out just because it was something that we didn't get in the United States. Really, my expectations were pretty low, as it is a nice price Volume 8 budget title. I believe these had an original MSRP of 2,200 yen according to the back artwork, but it probably shows there's only 3 tables that at least that are unlocked ready to play, and they're all ultimately variants of the exact same table with very minimal graphics. Sound was okay, but overall not a great pinball title, unless you're just kind of chasing them like I am, and we'll see. There are some pretty cool Japanese exclusive PS1 pinball titles that I already do have in the collection, so all is not lost, but this one I can't really recommend unless you just buy it dirt cheap like me and you're curious. One of my Colorado finds, this was something I wasn't like looking for specifically, but I knew that it was a missing hole in my Sega Saturn collection. I do essentially have a full US Sega Saturn set, but I'm now starting, I guess, to fan off into chasing some of the related items. So I found a demo CD called Sega Saturn Bootleg 2. The original bootleg demo disc is actually pretty easy to find. I think it was a system pack-in if I remember correctly, but this one must have been much later, as it has titles that were kind of like mid to late 97, which is not really like the peak of the Saturn era. You can kind of get a look there of some of the stuff that's on there. And I got a really good price on this at one of the game stores in Colorado, but then I just happened to look it up on eBay and saw that one of these recently sold for over $100, so definitely not one of the more common demo discs out there. I'm not necessarily chasing them all, and there's actually another one that seems to be really uncommon, is the Sega Screams Volume 2 also. The Sega Screams original demo disc was very common, but the second one I think, again, just was packed in with very late versions of the hardware, and there just aren't a whole lot of them out there. So, neat little addition to my Sega Saturn collection, and just happy to get something else that I wasn't expecting to find out there. I did get one new release this month, and I'll give a shout out to TJ Kitsune for posting this in his most recent pickups video last month, because I had kind of forgotten that this got released in the month of December. And it really shouldn't have surprised me because they've been pretty consistent, and that is the M2 Shottriggers series of shooters that the company M2 has been bringing, of vintage arcade games and classic shooters to the PS4. Really, they've been doing a nice release schedule where pretty much around every Christmas time you get another one of these, and then I think actually 2023 was a good year in that we got one of their Toaplan Shooting Garage, or whatever it is, Arcade Garage series games in the midsummer. And then we got this one kind of as a bonus, which is actually a cave shooter from the early 2000s. So this one is called Dodonpachi Dai-Ou-Jou. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And this has like all the variants of the arcade hardware, like Death Label and all that kind of stuff. Honestly, some of the cave shooters get a little bit ridiculous with all the revisions and variants that they have on the same title. But this is a really nice way to get this compilation. I've actually owned the original home version of this for the Japanese PS2 since it came out in, I don't know, approximately 2004 or so, and always thought the artwork on it was super cool. Just really easy pick up and play shooter, but very much a bullet hell style game, as many of the cave shooters are. So this one has some nice little variations in the gameplay that you can try some different modes. If you're kind of a beginner, there's some easy modes, things like that. But like the front end for all these M2 Shottriggers Series games is really well thought out, and definitely they take their time in applying that to some of these classic titles. So ultimately, I figured this was worth grabbing and selling off my PS2 copy. I went back and played that too, just to make sure that's what I wanted to do. And just due to the PS2 visual display on a modern TV not being the best, this ultimately blows it away as far as how it looks. So very happy I got this. One thing I also want to add to it though is I ordered this from a seller in Hong Kong because I missed the original pre-order on it, and they still had the pre-order bonus that many of the copies on eBay don't come with. So this is the bonus book that came with the pre-orders. Just has some additional like artwork and tips for like super play and stuff like that in it. Not real thick or anything like that. But I like getting these two because most of these M2 Shottriggers series games all had one of these bonus books also. So very happy to get that, and that's ultimately got the original game artwork on the cover here that matches up with that Japanese PS2 version and also the arcade game. But very happy to get that. I hope we'll get more of the Toaplan series games because those are ultimately my favorite, and I feel like we're getting right about to the era where all the meat and potatoes are of some of their best titles. So hopefully we'll see some more of those coming soon. From here, I'm just going to really move on to my next theme of my video, which is upgrades. This was definitely a month of not necessarily new games to my collection, but games that I didn't have boxes, manuals, and whatnot for. So, first one of these is for Time Cruise on the TurboGrafx 16. I just talked about my love for video game pinball. This is yet another one of those. It is by the Japanese developer Face, which I have always liked. They're very quirky. But this is a very strange game for a couple of reasons. So this is was released kind of late in the US Turbo library around like 1992, I believe. And this was actually after Alien Crush and Devil's Crush, which are two of like the best video game pinball games of all time. So it was almost like this game is not bad by any means, but it can't even beat those games that had come out prior. And so it's kind of like, are you sure you wanted to bother with that, putting it out in the US? Because I think even this came out about a year after the Japanese version. The other interesting thing is I had the Japanese PC Engine version, and it's called Time Cruise 2. It's the exact same game as this. It turns out the original Time Cruise was released for, I think, like the one of those Japanese convertible computers. I don't know why I'm saying Japanese computers, like the Sharp X68000. It might have been on that, or it was one of the other comparable ones, like MSX. And then PC Engine got the sequel to that. But this, since we never got the original in the US, they just went ahead and just called it Time Cruise. So kind of confusing as far as that goes. I already had the Hue card for this, and so ultimately I just got the manual that kind of made it just look nice in a jewel case. This is one of the late release titles that didn't come with like a jewel case back anyway. They were one of the ones that still came with the cardboard box. So ultimately, to be complete, I'd have to have the outer cardboard box, but those are really hard to get. So happy to get this at least. It looks better than just having a loose Hue card floating around, and I'm getting really close to at least having the manual for all my Hue cards so I can put them all in jewel cases. Another Colorado find. So this was another game store that I went to out there. I had visited it about a year ago for the first time, and this game was in inventory then, and I'd asked about it. And this is Imperium for the Super Nintendo. Pretty obscure shooter for the system, and it is a vertical shooter, which is my preferred style. Honestly, a pretty good game. I don't feel like a whole lot of people talk about this one. It's not excellent by any means, but it doesn't embarrass itself like a lot of the Super Nintendo shooters with a ton of slowdown or anything like that. Vic Tokai published game, which I kind of like some of the weird things that they brought out in the US, even though they usually were just publishing other developers' stuff. But what interested me about this was just that I had the card already, and they had the box when I saw it a year ago with the game. So I asked the price a year ago. I kind of balked. I was like, that's kind of what a complete one goes for, and it was still missing the manual. So I didn't get it then. I went back this year and asked again, and I think they quoted me the exact same price they said a year ago, even though it hadn't moved. But this time I asked, hey, I already have the cartridge. Would you just sell me the box? And they said, sure. So that actually worked out really well in my favor because I think they kind of undercut themselves on what the box was worth. They gave me the box very, very cheap, and then ultimately they'll just sell the cartridge. So I have a nice box copy of this now, and I'm just going to chase down a manual for it and hopefully have this one complete very soon. So very happy to get this. Just not, like I say, a very popular title on the Super Nintendo, but I think it's worth a look. Another thing I got out on the Colorado trip was a box and manual for a Game Boy title that I always liked, and this is Penguin Wars. I already had the cartridge for this. I believe the history on Penguin Wars is it was like a very early computer game and ultimately got brought to a ton of systems. And there is actually a PS4 modern version of it you can get that is excellent. So if you've never played one of the games in the series, I highly recommend checking it out. The Japanese Famicom got this game as well. We just didn't get it on the NES, so you get to play it in black and white, basically. But very, very addictive arcade-style game, just kind of like a Pong variant in a way, but just with some extra spice to it, and that you're playing kind of top to bottom, not side to side. So definitely can recommend this. It's like an arena sports arcade pick and play type of game. And of course, the artwork on it is charming, so very happy to have that complete for the original Game Boy. And then the rest of the stuff I got, most of this, actually I think all of this was on the trip, is manuals. So I always am looking for NES manuals. I'm trying to go for the full set of those. And ultimately I'm getting down to some of the more expensive and also some of the lesser fun titles that I need to get the full set. So these kind of had a little bit of pain to buying them because they pretty much were full price. They weren't really cutting a deal. But I just like finding them in stores versus buying them on eBay and having to pay shipping and all that. So first one of these is Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't have a whole lot of history with Nightmare on Elm Street. I just really didn't watch Freddy movies when I was a kid or anything like that. And don't really understand why this game has gotten so expensive other than just maybe 80s nostalgia. It is kind of a unique title in that it does support the 4-player adapter. There's not a whole lot of games that do that, so I guess maybe that has some of the reason that this game is hot. But it is an LJN title, which is usually not a sign of quality, so apparently this one has some redeeming factors. Maybe I need to go back and play the NES version, but definitely one I needed. Then we get into some of the Koei titles, which, if you've watched my videos, you know I'm not a fan of these. They're like Chinese war simulation games, basically, of ancient history. This one, I think, is actually based on European history, and this is Gemfire, but it is the same style of game. Most of their manuals were pretty thick because the games are so complicated, and then what was nice about this one is it did come with the original map for the game as well, which is pretty classy. So again, not a cheap title by any means, especially because it had the map, but one I needed, so happy to get that. And then continuing the Koei series of obscure stuff that is not fun to play. Here we have Romance of the Three Kingdoms 2, which is the less common sequel to that title. Another just very thick manual. I didn't get I think this one originally came with the map as well. I didn't get it for that one, but no big deal. This one is more exciting to me. This is Monster in My Pocket. It was one of the somewhat later Konami titles for the system. Really fun game. It's a little bit easy, based on a series of toys that really nobody remembers as far as I know. I already had the box for this one, so this one is now complete, which is pretty cool. And just definitely a fun arcade platformer style game, so that one's pretty cool to get. Another one I'm happy to find is Super Spy Hunter, and this one had a very different title in Japan. It actually wasn't designed as a Spy Hunter game, and it also isn't based on an arcade game like the original Spy Hunter is. So very different title. I think it was called Battle Formula in Japan, if I remember correctly, and actually pretty fun to play. So has the overhead gameplay style like the original Spy Hunter, but definitely has some new tricks up its sleeve. Obviously very plain manual art, unfortunately, but Sunsoft titles are pretty cool like that. Recently, one of my videos just not too long ago, I found a manual for the NES top loader. I had two boxes, original boxes for the top loader systems, but neither of mine had the manual. So now I have the manual for both of them, since I found another one on the trip. And then the last manual, this was kind of an oops on my part. I document my NES manuals I'm looking for on my phone very thoroughly, and I update my list every time I buy stuff, because early on I kept like just impulse buying things and I wasn't sure if I needed them or not, and I ended up with duplicates. So I need to do the same thing for Super Nintendo. I'm not going for the full set of Super Nintendo games, but I'm trying to at least track down the manuals for games I have the boxes for, kind of like that Imperium I just showed you. So I impulse bought a manual for XLA, which is a great shooter by Konami for Super Nintendo. And I knew I had the box for this, and for some reason I thought I was missing the manual, but I got home and I already had the manual. So now I have a duplicate of this. The only thing I can say nice about this is this one is in better condition than my other one, so I guess I will sell on the other copy. But that's the downside of not keeping notes when you're out in the field and you're not sure what you have and what you don't have. So I try to keep organized for that reason, so I don't spend money I shouldn't on things I don't need. But that about does it. Hopefully you enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching. Please take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you think. I will talk to you soon. Have a great day or night, wherever you are.